Anytime you are entering coordinated entry information, your provider should reflect coordinated entry NY-505. To do this, you will choose Enter Data As in the top right corner. From here, you can search for coordinated entry or enter the provider ID, which is 236. Here you can see coordinated entry NY-505. The next step will be to find the client you are looking to add the coordinated entry referral for. Before entering a coordinated entry referral, you must first add a release of information. To do this, select the ROI tab and select Add Release of Information. Your first step is to ensure the provider is showing as coordinated entry NY-505. If it is not, you must cancel, change your enter data as, and return to this screen. Your next step is to ensure every member of the household that should be included under the ROI is selected here. If the client agrees to have their information shared for coordinated entry purposes, select Yes for release granted. Consenting to a release of information is not a requirement to receive services. If a client would still like to be on the CE list but not share their information, please select No so we are aware this conversation took place. An ROI is good for 1 year. Documentation refers to how the ROI was consented to by the client. Typically, this is a signed statement from client, but there are other options here. And finally, the witness is the person who had the conversation with the client about the release of information. Once everything is filled out, click Save Release of Information. Once you have entered a release of information, you can begin entering the coordinated entry referral. To do this, go to the Entry Exit tab and click Add Entry Exit. Your first step is to make sure the provider is showing as coordinated entry NY-505. If it is not, cancel out and change your enter data as. Your next step is to ensure that if there are any additional household members listed here, that they are checked off to be included as part of the coordinated entry referral. For CE referrals, the type should always be HUD. For this example, I will show you what happens if you were to select an incorrect type. As you can see, because we chose an incorrect type, no assessment has loaded. To correct this, we'll change the type to HUD and click Update. Now the CE assessment has loaded. This first section is all about client choice. The first 4 questions are about which housing programs the client is interested in. A reminder, for PSH, a client or someone else in the household must have a qualifying condition. If they do not, this should be marked No. These next 3 questions are about which counties the client is interested in living in. A client may choose a county outside of their home county, but they should be informed that clients will be prioritized based on which county they currently reside in. Family composition should be filled out for family referrals only and is meant to help the person matching match the family to an appropriate sized housing opportunity. There are 2 ways you can enter this in. The first is to enter in the number of bedrooms based on occupancy rules, or you can enter in a breakdown of the family including gender and age. For this example, we will say 1 bedroom. This question is asking about the client's sexual orientation, whether or not the client is pregnant, and if anyone in the household has been incarcerated within the last 3 months. Once you have answered all of these questions, you can move on to the next section. The next section is the CNY-VIs, and this will be covered in the next few videos. Before entering a CNY-VI, you must first add a coordinated entry sub-assessment. To do that, find the coordinated entry assessment section and click Add. The date will auto-populate based on the date of the entry. The assessment location will be your agency. For our example, we will do Catholic Charities Men's Shelter. The assessment type refers to how the assessment was completed. For example, we will say in person. The assessment level is always housing needs assessment, and the prioritization status is always placed on prioritization list. Click Save. There are 3 different CNY-VIs based on the household type you are entering the VI for. The CNY-VI singles is for single individuals 25 years of age or older. The VI family is for families, including parenting youth ages 18 through 24. And the VI youth is for non-parenting youth between the ages of 18 and 24. Once you have completed a CNY-VI, you can move on to the next section, Universal Project Stay Data Elements. These elements will auto-populate from other entries in HMIS, and it is important that you review them for accuracy. Some important elements that you should review include relationship to head of household. If there are any inconsistencies with the answer to this question, it may result with the client not pulling on the list. Another is, does the client have a disabling condition? Remember, a client or anyone in the household must have a disabling condition to qualify for PSH. Prior living situation refers to where the client was sleeping the night before the coordinated entry assessment is entered. And the length of stay in previous place should reflect the amount of time the client was in that situation. Approximate date this episode of homelessness started is used to determine length of time homeless, which is a tiebreaker for clients who have the same CNY-VI score. There will be more in the next section of the video on how to calculate the approximate date this episode of homeless started. And finally, these last 2 elements, number of times client has been on the street in shelter or in shelter in the last 3 years, including today, and the total number of months homeless on the street or in shelter in the past 3 years are used to determine a client's chronic status. So please make sure these are correct. Once you have completed reviewing the universal data elements, you can scroll to the bottom and click Save. Now a CE referral has been completed for the head of household. As previously mentioned, the approximate date this episode of homelessness started is used to determine a client's length of time homeless. This is then used as a tiebreaker for clients on the CE list with the same CNY-VI score. An episode of homelessness is a continuous length of time in literally homeless situations, not broken by any periods of 7 or more days in a non-homeless situation, or by any periods of 90 or more days in an institution such as jail, a hospital, or rehab. Prior to meeting with the client, you should review HMIS to get a snapshot of their homeless history. When you meet with the client, remember that they may not have the same definitions of what is or isn't literally homeless as does HUD. It is important to talk the client through their prior living situations, including where they stayed and for how long. Begin with the night before shelter until you hit one of the breaks previously mentioned, either 7+ days in a non-homeless situation or 90+ days in an institution. For shelter and street outreach, interim updates can be used to update any information within a coordinated entry referral. To do this, click the icon in the Interims column and click Add Interim Review. The interim review type should always be Update, and for our example, we'll say this update happened on March 12th. Here you can see all the information that can be updated within an interim. For our example, let's say the client has decided they are now interested in rapid rehousing. Once you have made all of the changes you need to make, you can save and exit. For housing projects, interim updates can be used to view matches as well as document any contact attempts made with the client or caseworker after a match has been made. To do this, click the icon in the Interims column and select Add Interim Review. The review type should always be update. For our example, this will be March 15th. Here at the top under Match Provider Coordinated Entry Event, you can see the match made on March 12th with TSA Hale. To document any contact attempts, you will find Client Contacts, Housing Provider Contacts, and click Add. For housing provider offering services, in our example, this will be TSA Hale. Contact type refers to how the contact or attempted contact was made. For our example, we will do phone call. Client event refers to how the contact attempt resulted. Was the client interested in services, no longer eligible for services, refused service, or could the client not be reached? For our example, we will say the client could not be reached. In the notes section, you will just enter a brief description of what happened. Then click Save. The process for exiting a client from coordinated entry and effectively removing them from the coordinated entry list is the same for shelter, street outreach, and housing projects, though there are different reasons for why each would exit a client. For shelter and street outreach, a client should be exited after 90 or more days with no contact. Another reason is if the client has expressed they are no longer interested in being part of the coordinated entry system. And finally, another reason would be if the client found housing outside of the coordinated entry system. For housing projects, clients should be exited when the client is opened and housed within the project. For our example, we'll exit the client based on having been housed with the rapid rehousing provider. To do this, we'll click the pencil icon in the exit date column. For our example, the client was housed on March 14th, so that is the date we will leave here. The reason for leaving will be completed program, and the destination will be permanent housing situations, rental by client with ongoing housing subsidy. And for rental subsidy type, we will do rapid rehousing or equivalent subsidy. Click Save and Continue. Next, scroll to the bottom, click Save and Exit, and the client has been successfully exited from coordinated entry.